So we're going to try something new. I've been thinking about doing this for a very long time, and mainly because I get so many emails every day, believe it or not, from people asking me about being a roadie and things that go into it and stuff like that. So I figured, why not start a little mini series on YouTube, just roadie story time, telling stories about what's happened on the road, different tours I've been on, and kind of just like sitting with your friend and telling stories. And we're actually currently live on Twitch. Hello, chat. You're still timed out because I can't trust half of you for what you say, but if I see anything interesting, I'll put it on screen. If you are watching this on YouTube later, you can go to twitch.tv/TankTheTech because we often talk about music stuff and do reactions and a bunch of other stuff, but you can join us on here. But I debated on whether I was going to do these roadie story times just sitting here with my camera or doing it live on Twitch. And I came to the conclusion of doing it live on Twitch because I actually feel like when you're telling a story, it's better when you're in an environment where there's other people. Now, we're online, there's people in chat, you're watching later, but I feel like it would be better, more natural to feel like I'm sitting with people and telling a story rather than talking to my camera. So that's how we're gonna do this. But I figured for the very first roadie story time, why not tell the story that started everything? And I'll tell you guys the story of how I actually became a roadie, and insert sponsored ad right here. But before we go any further, I just want to take a quick minute to talk about the sponsor of today's video, our friends over at Ekster. Ekster is mainly known as the company that invented the world's first trackable wallet, but they have so many other awesome features and awesome quality, which is why I decided to ditch my old school generic wallet a couple years ago, and I've been using theirs ever since. Now, I always use the Parliament wallet, which after a couple years of wear and tear on tour and everyday use, still looks pretty amazing and is in great shape. And I love this thing because it's super slim and it doesn't feel like a brick sitting in my back pocket when I'm sitting down. It has quick card pop-up access and can hold up to 12 cards in cash. It has built-in RFID blocking to protect from data theft. It's made with environmentally certified premium leather and a tracking card, which can be used in the Find My app in case you ever lose it or misplace it. So head on over to the link that's on screen, or you can just click the link that's in the description or the pinned comment on this video. And don't forget to use the code TankTheTech while you're checking out, because you're going to get an additional 5% off on top of their current New Year's sale, making it up to 45% off select products in total. So thank you to everybody that took the time to watch this, and thank you to Ekster once again for sponsoring one of my videos. So this is the number one question that I always get. How did you become a roadie? All the time, like, I would like to get into the music industry. How do I become a roadie? And really, to be honest, there's no great answer for this. I always tell people by accident or on accident, however you choose to say it. Right place, right time, how circumstances worked out. I just accidentally fell into being a roadie for another band. Punkin writing in chat said fail as a musician. You could say that, and we'll get into that, but one of the most important things in this music industry that I always tell people is people like to throw around the term, it's all about who you know. And I actually don't think that's true in this industry. I think it's all about who knows you. And that is a big point that I've always brought up, is like, whenever you're touring or working for bands, always network, always meet people, make sure you leave a good impression, because I've gotten more jobs from people remembering me from another tour and calling me about stuff than me having a connection to somebody else. So like I said, it's all about who knows you. But let's dive into the beginning of all of this. So years ago, and I think where we'll start is like 2006, somewhere around there, I was in a band. I was in a band called Inept from Chicago. I played bass and did backing vocals. And while we never got signed in North America, we did get signed in Japan. We were signed to Kick Rock Records. But we were an independent band, but we were fortunate enough that we got a lot of regional and national tours as a support band. In the early days of us being in a band, we were thrown on opening slots in Chicago, where we grew up. We made a good impression on other bands, and when it came time for them to tour, they would bring us along with them as an opener and kind of do some really cool tours while I was in a band. We did support tours with like A Day to Remember, All Time Low, Trapped, Back off, I'll take you Red, and a lot of other cool like rock bands and stuff. But where we're going to go with this story was in 2008, I believe, if my timing is not off. My band was on a tour package with Trapped, Red, and Hailstorm. It was actually one of Hailstorm's very first tours, and it's really cool because they were like touring in an RV back then, and the only road crew they had with them was Lizzie and RJ's parents. And they were awesome. They were in this like old Winnebago, and like we really hit it off with them. They were like super, super cool people. But anyways, during this tour, we really got to know the guys from Red really, really well. And then later on in the tour, when they had their own shows on days off from the main tour, they actually asked us if we wanted to come open for them. And we became friends with them. And we always, you know, hung out on days off and opened for them on other shows. And this kind of continued for the next year. Like whenever they had a headlining tour coming up, they would actually call us and ask us if we would like to open for them. And it was super fun. We did it quite often. And at this time, being like, you know, 20, 21 years old, in an unsigned touring band, like we had no crew. It was just the five of us in an old Chevy Astro van in a trailer. And we were broke a lot. And when I say broke, I mean broke. Like I probably went 3 years of my life where I had no more than like $20 ever. Broke enough to the point where I had to ask one of my band members that had like a job back home that had extra money if I could borrow like $1 to get like a McChicken sandwich at McDonald's that day and stuff. So it's like living on the road and, you know, trying to work out your dreams of being in a band. Like, yeah, we were broke a lot and we had to deal with that. So there was one specific moment that I feel like this led to really the culmination of me becoming a roadie and realizing I wanted to do that. We were doing a show with Red in, I believe it was like Toledo, Ohio. I think it was somewhere in Ohio. And we did our set and then they were doing their set. And I was standing at the front of house sound console with their tour manager / front of house engineer. And the lighting director from this venue was doing a very, very poor job that day. Like the lighting was really noticeably bad. And the tour manager had just happened to mention to me while we were just standing there, like between songs, he was like, God, I wish we knew somebody like that knew how to do lighting. Like I wish somebody on this tour knew how to do lighting. Now, what they didn't know was that at the time back home when we weren't touring, I worked at this little venue outside of Chicago called Mojo's, which is now different owners and it's moved and stuff. But Mojo's is the early days of that is what is now the Forge in Joliet, Illinois. But I did lighting amongst other things at this venue. And I told their tour manager, like, I know how to do lighting and I know your guys' music. And he was like, really? He's like, well, maybe at one of our next shows, let's just like see how you do. So he talked to the band and, you know, the next few days we had shows on the main package with Trapped and Hailstorm. And then at their next show that they were headlining, they were like, hey, like, we don't have a ton of money, but like, we'll kick you $40 if you want to do our lights during the set, like today. And if it goes well, maybe we can like turn this into a thing. And $40 to a 21-year-old that was never used to having money. I was like, $40, let's go. Like I just hit the jackpot, dude. I was so stoked for $40, man. So that night I did lighting for them. And it went well. And as a lighting director, like knowing their music, obviously I was able to do really cool cues with their music and stuff like that. And then it went well. So they asked me to do it the next show. And the next show, I'll never forget this. It was at the Chameleon Club in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And the lighting desk was actually in the balcony and the stage was on the floor. And there was one lighting cue that I hit where I remembered their guitar player, Anthony, like looking up at the balcony to me and just smiling so big because he was like happy that they had like a good lighting show. And that was when I kind of realized like, wow, I really like doing this. Like I like being a part of other bands' shows and not being on stage. So after that show that night, we were like talking about it and having fun. And they were like, man, that was super cool. And we really, really like enjoy having you do lighting for us. And kind of just turned into a conversation of like, well, what if we keep bringing your band on tour with us in exchange for doing lighting, and we'll still pay you like $40, whatever. And I was like, sick. Like, yeah. And the rest of my band was like excited about it because they were like, cool, that means we get to be on national tour and all this stuff. And so that kind of became a thing over the next couple months where like every time Red had like a headlining tour, we came out on that in exchange for me doing lighting. So like I would load in, I would do the show with my band, we'd load out, and then I'd run up to the lighting desk and run the show for Red. And this went on for quite a few months. And then during that summer, I remember my band was on tour doing, our own headlining shows and stuff between package tours. And we're somewhere on I-80. I remember this. We're somewhere on I-80 in Iowa, in the Midwest. Like we were driving to a club in Iowa City that we played a lot. And I got a phone call from the guitar player for Red. And back then, keep in mind, like iPhones weren't a thing. I think I had a Motorola Razr, but when I saw him calling me, I immediately, like an idiot, I was driving and I put him on speakerphone so everybody in the entire van could hear, because I thought the only reason he's calling me is to ask us to go on tour with them again. So I put him on speakerphone and he's like, hey man, how's it going? Like, hey, I got a question. What are you guys doing this fall? And everybody in the van was like super excited. And we're like, oh dude, they're going to offer us another tour. And yeah, everybody in chat's like, yeah. Looking back on it now, it's kind of stupid. So I was like, dude, we don't have anything going on. Like, yeah, what's going on? And he's like, well, we just got offered a tour, like a direct support slot on a tour. And we were just talking, and there's this long pause, and he goes, we wanted to know if your band wasn't doing anything, if you'd come on the road and work for us, like on this tour. And everybody in the van kind of looked at me like, what's he going to say right now? And I was like, dude, I don't know. Like, I got to talk to the band about it and see what's going on. And he's like, all right, man, well, like, just kind of decide here and let us know in the next couple days. And I was just like, okay. So I started talking to the guys in the van about it. And the weird thing I didn't bring up too is a couple of my band members at the time were kind of pissy about the fact that I was getting paid extra money. Like while we were on tour by another band. Looking back on it, even in the situation then, I thought that was a stupid argument because I was doing extra work and making money. Like it shouldn't have involved them at all. But they were upset about the fact that I was making extra money on the road and they weren't. And then, sorry, my dogs are going nuts right now. But anyways, they were already kind of weird about it. And then when we were talking about it in the van, there were a couple of them that were like, no, that's lame. Like you're in our band. You need to be in our band. Like you can't take time off to go work for another band. But then there were a couple other guys that were like, well, this could actually be kind of cool because we were going to take some time off of touring to finish a record anyways. And maybe he goes on this tour and makes some connections with other bands, and then that could help our band in the long run. So eventually the conversation got to the point where like they were cool with it. They were like, yeah, let's take the 6 or 7 weeks off from our own touring and you can go out with them and maybe, make some money, make some connections, and then come back and whatever. And so when we, had a day off, I called the guitar player for Red back and was like, yeah, I would love to do this. And he was like, cool, man. Yeah, we'll have our tour manager call you and go over everything. And he's like, would you be open to doing another job too? And I was like, well, what? And he's like, well, we have the budget for merchandise too. We need to find a new merchandise person. And like if you could do merchandise and then the lights during the show, like you come out and, we'll pay you more. And I was like, okay. And like more in my head, I didn't know what they meant. And when I eventually talked to their tour manager, this is my first show pay as a roadie. It was $75. $75 per show day, not on days off. And again, as a 21-year-old kid, I was like beyond stoked. Like $75, that means if we do 4 shows in a week, that means I make $300 in a week. Like I felt like loaded, dude. I was so beyond stoked. Like nowadays, I wouldn't even get off my couch for something like that. But I mean, yeah, I've been doing this for years. But to somebody young that wants to do that in the industry, that's huge. So as I was talking to their guitar player more on the phone, I was like, dude, I know I'm in my band and I want to make it with my band. And yeah, it's the thing that every person in a band always, you want to make it on your own and stuff like that. But the harsh reality is that 99% of bands that exist aren't going to make it, whatever making it means to you. To me, it's, at the time I was a young, naive kid. I thought it was like getting signed and making money. Like just being financially like successful with your music, like being able to live off of your music is what I would say is, making it. And when I was young, I didn't realize it. Like you never want to admit like, okay, maybe this band isn't going to go anywhere. But I talked to their guitar player and was like what happens like if I actually enjoy doing this and stuff like that? Like how full-time could this be? And he's like, well, it's like, I mean, we don't want to tear you away from your band or anything, but like this could be as full-time as you want to make it. Like if you come out here and do a good job and we need you and want you out here, then you can stay out here. And he's like, we already know you do a good job at lighting. So he's like, we would take you right now. And I was like, so if I told you I wanted to work for you guys full-time right now and quit my band, like you guys would promise me a job? And he's like, yeah. He's like, again, I don't want to tear you away from your band, but for me, man, at that point in my life, I was so tired of being broke. And I think that realization was setting in that like my band wasn't going to be like financially successful and stuff, that I was just like, yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to quit my band and I'll come work for you guys. And my mistake, this is dumb in hindsight, that day was a day off, but the next day we were driving to a show that we had. And I decided to tell my band in the van while we were driving to a show that after that tour, I was going to quit and go work for Red full time. And of course that made it everybody in chat give me a hard time. I know I was 21. Give me a break. Not the best time to tell them. They were very mad. I actually believe I remember my singer actually saying something kind of passive aggressive on stage about me, like to the crowd and stuff about me quitting. But yeah, we went home after that show and it was kind of awkward because I lived with one of my guitar players. And yeah, it was that moment in my life where I was like, I don't know, man, this, guaranteed money, this could turn into something. And little did I know it would have started me on my full-time, career on being a roadie. But yeah, I had a couple weeks at home and I ended up going on tour with Red. And the first show we ever did was somewhere in Wisconsin. It was like a minor league hockey rink or something. When I say minor league, I don't mean like minor league 3,000 seater or something. I mean like it was a tiny little town's hockey rink. But it's the first time I ever attempted to do merchandise in my life. Learned a lot. Thought I knew how to do it and didn't. That's why I have a lot of respect for merchandise managers on tour, because there's a lot more that goes into it than a lot of people realize. Like, oh, you're just selling t-shirts. No, there's a lot of organizational skills and accounting skills and a lot of other stuff, people skills, stuff like that go into it. And yeah, and then I would do lights during the show. So pretty much my early day would be counting in all the merchandise, making sure everything was good. When doors opened, I sold everything. Then I'd close the merch stand down and have like a venue security person watch the merch stand, while I was doing lighting. And then the show would end, I'd go back to merch and do that. And I did that for these guys for, long story short, a couple of years before I moved on to another band. And they fired me, which will be a story for another time. The first and only band that's ever fired me from a tour. But yeah, that's literally how I became a roadie. It was just circumstances, right place, right time, and just having the right people know who I was and giving me a chance. And that's how I got in. But anyways, yeah, I just wanted to kind of get this story out there, how I became a roadie. And we'll get into more of these stories, I think, about how things have gone on the road and other funny things that have happened. There's quite a few stories out there that we could tell. People in chat are already familiar. I haven't told the whole story yet, but the infamous first time at Oktoberfest story, which will probably make people look at me a little bit differently. Getting on one of the biggest tours I've ever been on at that point in my career with Van Halen and having their entire operation hate my guts for a moment in time. That was a fun story too. But we'll get into more of these. If there's any questions you have, or if there's anything specifically you'd like to hear about being a roadie or my time touring and stuff like that, drop them in the comments. I'll check comments out, and we'll do some more roadie story time in the future. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you didn't, I don't know, maybe we just won't do it again, or we'll just do it and not record it. But I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch. Again, if you're watching on YouTube later, you can go to twitch.tv/TankTheTech, where we record all the time. I'm also on a lot of social media. @TankTheTech is my handle on just about everything, and I post pictures while I'm on tour and do stuff like that, so you're more than welcome to follow there. But until next time, this was Roadie Storytime. Wherever you are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other. I love you all, and I will see you very soon.